Well, good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with tonight's preview for the health curriculum. And this is Teen Talk. This is the third of three curriculums that our Board of Education has approved staff to review for potential adoption for the fall of 2021. I do want to mention that we have Marco Garcia here with us tonight, who is here to provide translation. Thank you, Mr. Garcia, for being with us. Si quisieras alguien que le puede traducir, ahí tienen las instrucciones para que puedan accesar eso. And so with that, we'll go ahead and get started tonight. It is our hope that we'll have the opportunity to review the the existing adopted curriculum, what's in place right now. We'll give you a brief overview of the California Healthy Youth Act, which was enacted in 2016, has since been updated, and it is why we are pursuing an update in our own curriculum, as at this point, our district is out of compliance with the statute. Curriculum recommendations, as I mentioned, Teen Talk is the third of the three curriculum options that our school board did approve for us to review. And so we'll talk about that this evening. Last week, we talked about Positive Prevention Plus, and the week prior, we covered what we know as the 3 R's: rest, rights, respect, and responsibility. We'll talk a little bit about our adoption timeline and again, review the curriculum, which tonight is Teen Talk. It says rights, respect, and responsibility, but I promise tonight is all about Teen Talk, and I will make that adjustment real quick. Mr. Liu, if you could go ahead and refresh, we will be where we're supposed to be. We do apologize for that.
Thanks for the correction, Mr. Lichtel. I just wanted to add too, for those of you joining, feel free at any time to ask questions in the Q&A box down at the bottom of the webinar. We're happy to answer questions as we go, as well as questions at the end. So feel free to put that into the chat.
And Mr. Garcia, if you would just in Spanish, just let people know one more time if they need the translation, that would be wonderful. If you could do that now, that would be appreciated, if you can.
Yeah, no problem. So, buenas tardes a los que están aquí, a los que quieren una traducción en español. Aquí están las instrucciones, debe de haber un botón ahí abajo donde pueden oprimir y les puedo empezar con la presentación en español. Y si tienen preguntas, también pueden preguntar en español y yo puedo ayudar con que las respuestas. Gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Yeah. Would you be able to click the interpreter button so I can have that option as well?
Mr. Mercer, that might be you. Do you see that on your screen?
So I don't see interpreter anywhere on my screen either. So I'm wondering if it did not get set up properly.
I think I have it right here. Let me try.
Thank you, sir.
How's that?
Yeah,
there it is.
Yeah,
perfect. Thank you. All right, so with that, we're going to get started. And first, we're going to cover our existing health curriculum. And here in the Conejo Valley Unified School District, as you can see, we have three components to our health curriculum. Starting in 4th and 5th grade, we have part of the health, human growth and development program includes videos, 1 in 4th grade, 1 in 5th grade. This is a single lesson that is taught in the spring, and it is provided by our district and school nurses. They keep it very clinically accurate, medically accurate. There's no slang terms that are used. And our students at this point do watch their video separated by biological sex. That's been the program that's been in place for many, many years. And again, though we initiated this process for updating this curriculum as far back as 2016, when the California Healthy Youth Act was first enacted, there seemed to be some obstacles that kind of set us back, other issues that came up. And obviously about a year and a half ago, we kind of re-engaged in that process. And with the COVID, it set us back. But we decided that this year we needed to push through and have our curriculum adopted. And so that's part of our process. We will be looking at the 4th and 5th grade curriculum at some point, though our focus right now is at the secondary level, 7th and 9th rather. In 6th grade, we also have a video that is presented in the spring. This one's presented by our science teachers in the 6th grade, and just like 4th and 5th, it is medically accurate, very clinical. There's no slang terms used. And this video in the 6th grade, our students are together. So together as far as a whole class. In 7th grade, there's a family life unit. This curriculum was adopted in 2005, and it's about a 2-week unit taught in the spring by our science teachers. This is a 7th grade life science class, and as part of that class, which is the study of biology, for the most part, the family life unit dovetails nicely into that curriculum, and so that is when that's provided. And then lastly, and again, probably our greatest focus is on this health class that's taught in 9th grade. And currently we are using an adopted textbook that was adopted in 2005. It's called Glencoe Health. It is not California Healthy Youth Act compliant, as you can imagine. And so there are items that are missing that we are looking to address through this new adoption. In this course, students take the course together, so they're mixed by biological sex. And I also want to mention that the health class is not just about HIV/AIDS. It's not just comprehensive sexual education. It is a comprehensive course that covers fitness and nutrition and relationships and several other topics. And again, that course is taught over a semester. And so as Mr. Liu mentioned, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to post those in the question and answer, and we will either stop our presentation and address those issues, or we will address those as we go in writing back to you. And so with that, we'll turn it over to Mr. Mercer, who's going to talk a little bit about the California Healthy Youth Act.
Great, thank you, Mr. Lichtel. So with that, I think it's important that obviously the law is discussed. So here's the law. So the California Healthy Youth Act, as many of you know, it was adopted in 2016, state of California, updated in 2019, updated and implemented in 2019. And I won't review, because Mr. Lichtel kind of went over some of the pieces of that, but it is reflective for students in grades 7 through 12. That's the important piece. It is inclusive, and as part of that California Healthy Youth Act, the students receive that comprehensive sexual health education and HIV prevention. We do have, and this was mentioned last time, and we're actually going to go in a little bit more detail in this presentation about the opt-out piece, the parent guardian permission. So we did move a few years ago from the opt-in process to an opt-out process. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but wanted to mention that as part of this, because it's important to note, for the parent or the parent or guardian, that the pupil has a right to excuse their child from all or part of the sexual health education HIV prevention piece. So that was an important piece as part of that law. So we can move to the next slide. So as I just mentioned, this is the required piece of the California Healthy Youth Act, which deals with sexual health education and HIV prevention. These are just some of the topics that are included. The HIV/AIDS, sexually transmitted infections, as well as pregnancy, including, it should say, parenting, the adoption, abortion, safe surrender, and also sexual harassment and assault and human trafficking piece. So thank you, Mr. Liu. And so the part of that, part of what is included in there is that the social media piece of that, and where to go to seek assistance. So again, these are just some of the topics. There's a full listing of the instructional requirements in this piece of it, and you'll see the link there. That's the ed code that really shows the full listing of all of those. And as you see right there, you click on it and it'll show you, a list of, you have with the HIV piece and AIDS, and it kind of, as you go down, it talks about parenting, And it gives you the full listing of everything that's in that comprehensive sexual health and HIV prevention. So we have, as Mr. Lichtel mentioned, in 9th grade, using the Glencoe Health Book from 2005. So here it is. And we have many of the instructional pieces that are included and that we are in compliance with through that text and through the materials that we use. And then on the right side of this slide, you'll see some of the areas that we are not in compliance with according to California Healthy Youth Act. So the non-compliant list is important just because it's important to know that these topics in particular were really looked at deeply as the committee reviewed the 3 proposed curriculum. And so you're looking at it through a lens of what is not included in the current Glencoe Health Book that is necessary to be in compliance with California Healthy Youth Act. So just giving you an idea on the right side there of what was looked at and vetted through this process.
And so to build upon what Mr. Mercer shared, on this previous slide, Mr. Mercer shared the required instructional topics or like instructional objectives that are set forth by the California Healthy Youth Act. But part of the law itself describes the overall criteria that the curricula must meet. And so the curricula, some of them, not all of them, are described in California Education Code 51933. And you can see that comprehensive sexual health education and HIV prevention education must include all of the factors that we've described here, in addition to the other ones in the Education Code. But some of them being that the curricula is factual and medically accurate, that it's appropriate for students of all races, genders, sexual orientations, ethnicities, including also students with disabilities and English learners, that the curricula would teach pupils about gender, gender expression, and gender identity, that the curricula would encourage communication with a parent, guardian, or trusted adult, and that the curricula would provide students with knowledge and skills to form healthy relationships. Again, these aren't specific topics that are addressed within comprehensive sexual health education and HIV prevention. This is the overall criteria of what the curricula in its entirety has to address in meeting those specific instructional topics. And so in a similar way, to pull up that specific education code, you can see here again that the curriculum shall satisfy all of the following criteria, and you can see the criteria here, including it being age appropriate, not reflecting or promoting bias, that it would provide pupils with valuable knowledge and skills they would need to form healthy relationships, just to read a couple. We're sharing this with you all really as an important distinction, as we've gotten questions about, what can I potentially opt out my child for? And so a simple way to frame that question is that parents or guardians have the right to opt out. And when discussing opting out, parents can opt out of the content. So the specific objectives, instructional objectives that Mr. Mercer shared, but not necessarily or not the people. And so more specifically, it says that you can opt out as a parent or guardian of content, for instance, related to contraception, sexually transmitted infections, adoption, etc. Anything that's included in Education Code 51934. However, you cannot opt out of the criteria that I was describing. Again, the criteria is what really fully describes what the totality of the materials should reflect and represent. So therefore, parents or guardians cannot opt out of information related to people in relation to gender, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, in addition to all of the other pieces that are a part of that 51933 that I just described. So we hope that that information is clarifying. We also provided this frequently asked question on our district's website, which I do feel slightly compelled to go to quickly. So on our district's website, if you scroll down to the health education page, first at the very top, you can see the previous 2 webinars that we've been able to host, one on Rights, Respect, Responsibility, the other on Positive Prevention Plus. Here's some information on how to preview the full curriculum. Rights, Respect, Responsibility you can download, and the paper materials for Teen Talk and Positive Prevention Plus are available at the main office for all of our middle schools and high schools. If you go down in the website, you can see what we currently have for grades 4, 5, and 6 for human growth and development. If you wanted to preview those videos, that previewing opportunity is still available, I believe, yes. And you can see the existing grade 7 curriculum, which is family life, in addition to the opt-out forms. Grade 9 for health, you can see that textbook that Mr. Mercer has in his office. You can look at it in its entirety by clicking that link, as well as viewing the opt-out form for 9th grade. And then certainly we've received a number of questions since we've really began this process, likely probably more than a year ago. And you can see that we continue to update our questions, and that can be a good source of information. If you continue to have a question, at any time you can submit a question here, and that information goes directly to Mr. Lichtel and our instructional services department for us to provide a response and potentially update that question onto the public frequently asked questions. So back to the presentation. When we're talking about the California Healthy Youth Act, we are looking for curriculum guidance on how the available curricula that are out there for comprehensive sexual health education, HIV prevention education, how compliant they are with the California Healthy Youth Act. And so the CDE does provide guidance by directing schools to the Adolescent Sexual Health Work Group. And you can see a description of that work group here in the middle. It really is at the state level, public health experts, as well as medical experts that are objectively looking at the curriculum to determine to what degree they are compliant with the California Healthy Youth Act. The ASHWIG, or Adolescent Sexual Health Work Group, is providing an updated review of the current curriculum, including Teen Talk, Rights, Respect, Responsibility, and Positive Prevention Plus, and they are due to provide their findings on, again, how compliant each is with the California Healthy Youth Act. We anticipate in the coming weeks. So, oh, Mr. Mercer, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and actually that's a good segue, because the work group actually is instrumental in working with districts and providing information about the different curriculum that's out there, as Mr. Liu mentioned. So they, in terms of our process, the 3 curricula that were evaluated and reviewed over the last several months, you see in front of you there. Tonight we are talking about Teen Talk. And previously we talked our first group with the Rights, Respect, Responsibility, 2 weeks ago with Positive Prevention Plus. So it's important to know that, you know, as our recommendation from instructional services, we really worked with ASHWIG and, you know, also looked at, you know, what's commonly used around our area, our region, our state. And so PPP was really commonly used, was very commonly used. And after talking with the working group, it was really determined that RRR and Teen Talk, which we're talking about tonight, were really scoring higher than others in terms of California Healthy Youth Act compliance. So those are some of the reasons why these were the big three that we were looking at. So you know, as we look through there, you can see that it takes you through what grade spans are addressed in each of the 3, and we're looking at Teen Talk again tonight. So this is a 6 through 12 or a secondary curriculum for the grade span there. It does have a modified curriculum, and when we say modified, that means there is special education curriculum available, and this was taken into consideration as we researched and explored this curriculum. It does have a Spanish translation, and there is a cost associated with the Teen Talk as well. So we'll be kind of digging a little deeper tonight into giving more information about Teen Talk, but that gives you a general overview of the three.
And so I'll quickly speak about our adoption process and where we are. As mentioned before, we will be using the analysis of the Adolescent Sexual Health Work Group, again, to determine how compliant each of these three curriculum are. We really have been engaging with our teachers and staff really since 2016, since the passage or the initial passage of the California Healthy Youth Act. But certainly as part of this review process, we have definitely ramped up our teachers' efforts to review these three curricula. Just very briefly, we have a team of about 16 teachers. We have several, of course, that are general education health teachers or 7th grade science teachers. But I'm also really proud of the contributions of our middle school and high school ELD teachers, as well as our special education teachers, which are also inclusive of our specialized program classroom teachers. And so this team of educators has been reviewing really for the last, I think, 5 or 6 weeks. They're reviewing one curriculum every 2 weeks. They have an opportunity to provide an individual rating form. Some of those results, which I will be able to share with you all. And then we happen to meet with them after every curriculum review to have really open and honest discussions about their impressions of the materials. We happen to actually have that meeting with them today at 1 o'clock, and certainly appreciate their work and their input. We have had the opportunity to speak with all of our district advisory committees or councils, going to DAC, as well as our GATE DAC, Special Education DAC, and our District English Language Advisory Committee. And in that opportunity, having really a space just to talk about where we're at with the process, but then also being able to provide opportunities for folks to ask questions and to provide input. We are looking forward to the input of our Student District Advisory Committee or Council, SDAC, as well as our Special Education District Advisory Committee or Council. Mr. Lichtel, you'll have to tell me one day, as I've done this 3 times. And so both of those entities have subcommittees that really have been either looking at some of the proposed materials or have been conducting listening sessions in the case of CDAC to really make sure that they, as well as we as a district, are hearing from our special education families as it relates to the topic of health. And the last part of our adoption process is, of course, the parent preview process. We sort of uniquely, for this situation, are doing preview events for these 3 proposed materials. Hopefully, if we're able to move forward with a recommendation to our Board of Education with one possible curricula, we will have additional previews for that single recommendation.
Mr. Liu, if I may, just real quick, I'd like to interject. There's a question I'd like to answer live, and also just remind everyone, unfortunately with this webinar style, it doesn't allow us to have a live question and answer. So we will handle all of those questions through the chat. And as Mr. Liu mentioned, you can either submit a question through the website or email any of us, and we're happy to get back to you. But there's a question, at this time, do the teachers and administration consider all the details in PPP age appropriate for 7th grade? And I would tell you that as part of our process, this is kind of what we're delving into right now. It's the work that's actually happening is determining which is, number one, from our standpoint, the curriculum that is most compliant, if you will, with California Healthy Youth Act, that provides our teachers with flexibility in maneuvering the curriculum in order to present that curriculum in a way that is not only understandable to the students, but that the teachers are comfortable with. So at this point, I would say, and again at this point, that I don't believe that there's an agreement that any of the curriculums in their entirety are 100% appropriate, if you will. And there may be some items that we as a staff will review and say, you know what, in for our community, maybe this doesn't fit. So maybe, there's been a lot of talk about role plays And our teachers, even today, told us that they weren't totally comfortable with some of the role plays, and they felt like it would put kids in a difficult spot. And so those discussions are happening as part of this adoption process. And as Mr. Liu said, we are doing these 3 preview nights as we are considering which one to recommend to the Board of Education. And once that happens, then we will have further conversations and have further preview events. We've made the curriculums, whatever's available to us, we've made available to you. We're not holding anything back. Whatever we were able to get from the publishers for these previews, we've provided to our community. Those are available at the district office on Jans Road. They're available at each of the secondary school sites in the main office. So if it's something, and they're available online. So you can go online and you can take a look at, Mr. Liu, correct me if I'm wrong, we did provide links online, correct? That people could look at those curriculums?
We were able to do that for Rights, Respect, Responsibility, but because of Teen Talk and Positive Prevention Plus, they're paid for curricula and also, of course, copyright. We were not given permission to provide electronic links.
Right. So 2 of those copyrights, and the best we could do is we're providing copies that are, again, at the district office or at every secondary school site in the main office. You can go there, you can review those materials and preview those. And again, we're trying to be as transparent as we can be. There's another question that just came up. I'll take this opportunity to answer that one live as well. Will parent-side councils provide a review and feedback of parents prior to making a final decision to take to the board? If so, how would we relay individual thoughts to our school's parent-side councils? I think we don't have anything in place right now that would go through the school site councils. The feedback loop in adoption of curriculum is through these meetings, and will also extend through the whatever it is that we believe we want to adopt. Once the board reviews that, then we will have additional preview nights, and that, as a parent, is your opportunity to provide input. We don't have a mechanism in place to run this through school site councils at this point, and so that most likely will not be happening. So hopefully that answers that question. Again, use us, email us, feel free to call. I'm happy to set up appointments with whomever. If you want to come in and review the curriculum, or if you want to just sit down and have a conversation, we're happy to facilitate those as well.
Thanks, Mr. Lichtel. Just to finish up the timeline really quickly, here's just a visual of that process I described. I'll really just more speak on the back end. We are quickly approaching April and May and June. We do anticipate that when we return from spring break, our staff will be able to get the feedback from Ashwig, as well as from SSTAC, our Student District Advisory Committee, as well as the feedback from CDAC, and using that information, as well as the input that we've received from parents and guardians here, and as well as over email. And then, of course, in addition to the input of our teachers that have reviewed all 3 curricula, we hope and anticipate to make a recommendation to our Board of Education, likely potentially the first or maybe the second board meeting in May. And at that point, we would set up additional preview nights for that one curricula. And at that point, our Board of Education, will have an opportunity for not just information, but ongoing discussion, not only, of course, during Board of Education meetings, but certainly, via email and other opportunities that families can reach out to our Board of Education too. So I will spend a little bit of time talking about Teen Talk. As we have done all 3 of these curricula, we try to stick with the same sort of structure of doing just a really quick walkthrough of what each curricula has and how it's sort of structured. Really, of course, as Mr. Lichtel mentioned too, the best way to learn about any of these curricula is to go down to a middle school or high school main office, call if needed, and they have those materials there waiting, and you can certainly have an opportunity to sit down and thumb through the pages. I think that that certainly is the most informative way to learn about the curriculum. So just general information, the year that Teen Talk was last updated was in 2019, and the California Healthy Youth Act was updated in 2019, so we anticipate that those updates were to account for that update in the law. You can see what the cost is there. It is a one-time cost. Teen Talk has materials for middle school and high school. There are bilingual materials, fully bilingual materials, meaning they have the same Spanish translation as the English version. And as Mr. Mercer shared, there is a modified curriculum. I don't see any questions about the modified curriculum, but there are questions in the past. There are some students, students with disabilities who in their IEP receive modified curriculum materials, and a modified curriculum in this case would be specifically designed potentially for those students who in their IEP receive modified curriculum. So the organization of topics, all abilities is the modified curriculum that I was speaking about briefly. You can read or just review the sessions. There are 11 different sessions in the all abilities curriculum. For middle school, this is the listing of the 12 sessions. And there's some similarity as well as some slight differences for high school, and these are the sessions for high school. So the next part of again, a brief walkthrough of Teen Talk is a review of the lesson structure. And so if you haven't participated in our previous webinars, I've selected the first really like content lesson for every middle school curricula. And so I will do really just a walkthrough of the structure. It's really not a deep dive into the content necessarily, but really helping to provide hopefully a picture on how a teacher may organize and present information to a classroom, and how that learning may occur. So you can see here, oh, and my little things didn't come in, but so for the first session, session 2 is on sexual and reproductive anatomy. You can see in the top box that as part of the materials, there's a clear definition of goals and objectives. And you can see that, for instance, for this session, session 2, the first objective is describe, students will be able to describe sexual and reproductive body part functions and locations. There's a note to the teacher reiterating the importance of the particular content. And then of course, at the very bottom, information about what the teacher needs to prepare and be ready in terms of materials and getting set for this particular session. Oh, there it's going. So the sort of introduction to the session continues by sharing with the teacher some additional activities that are, of course, connecting in or enriching or deepening to the lesson or session. And then it does provide a kind of an estimation on how much time it would take. This particular session, as it says there, a minimum of 65 minutes, a maximum of 90 minutes. And so each session has multiple activities. And so, I have just the first activity. You can see that the first activity for the teacher is this anonymous question box. You can see there's an objective underneath to provide the teacher as well as students a clear understanding of the purpose of the activity. And then for the teacher, there's a really clear step-by-step really instructions on how to, in this case, facilitate this activity. You can also see here in bullet number 3 that there are guidelines that the teachers provided for facilitating this type of, as it is, the anonymous question box activity. Activity 2.2, again, goes into the specific objective and walks the teacher through the 4 specific steps to get the lesson going and ready. You can see underneath on the bottom box that there are definitions provided here specific for the male body. And then students as well as the teacher have a, you can see this, it's a male anatomy matchup, just to get a sense of the, that there are worksheets and activities within this particular curriculum. Here there's of course provided a diagram, whereas a visual is provided for the specific vocabulary of that activity. And then the session wrap up for session 2, at the very end, there are 4 questions that are provided, not necessarily questions, but really activities or opportunities for the teacher to wrap up, as well as get some feedback from students as to how much of the content did they retain and what might the teacher need to go over that of course relates to the particular activity. And so that really describes, and again, the purpose of it is just to provide you all as parents and guardians with some of the feel of the structure of the lessons as you envision that happening in potentially in your child's classroom. So we, of course, have been able to, and are very grateful again for our staff that have been reviewing the curriculum. We are wanting to provide you all just with a little bit of analysis that they were able to provide us. So in working with them, we created a rating form that has several criteria that relate to the materials. And teachers went through each of the curriculum and provided and noted either strong evidence, adequate evidence, limited or no evidence. And we've denoted that, 4 being strong and 1 being no evidence. And so you can see some of the criteria here. I'll kind of walk through a couple as you just look through it. So one of the criteria is that the materials provide clear purpose and learning objectives for students. You can see that the overall, or the black bolded number, that was all of the teacher's feedback combined. And so that's a 3.7, which is, of course, really close to strong evidence. And so that is a high ranked criteria. You can see though that we did denote and disaggregated the information to just include special education staff. So the special education staff viewed that more as a 3.5, which is, right around the same rating as the overall. And then for our ELD teachers that reviewed, they felt that was more of adequate evidence and not necessarily strong evidence. And so you can see the rating here for each of these categories and how they are disaggregated by, again, the overall group, our special education teachers, and our ELD teachers. There was a question that was asked that I responded to in typing, but I'll share that as we prepare our presentation to our Board of Education, we will certainly work to provide in the best way, or hopefully in the most simple way possible, a way for families to have an understanding of, comparing the 3 side by side. We will likely, I anticipate, be able to provide staff feedback on a side by side, right, perspective too, to really help help us compare the 3. And so some of the other feedback that we received really today through our lengthy discussion with our teachers, some of the feedback was that some teachers felt that the student scenarios would be effective in engaging students in some discussion. Some of the high school teachers felt that it was kind of in a similar format as what they're used to, addressing some of the content in the Health Glencoe textbook. At the middle school, as well as from also in high school, so some of the activities or games didn't seem age appropriate. And from a standpoint of some of the teachers felt that the games or activities almost were not mature enough potentially for students, and that some of the activities, asked students to, share some of their personal opinions, like in too large of a public setting. And some of our teachers thought that that would be a concern. There was some definite discussion about the bilingual materials, and some of our staff including our ELD teachers, felt that the translated materials really may not actually provide a significant benefit for some of our, say, newcomer English learners. Rather, they felt that the translation didn't seem really, number one, I think, well done. And then I think secondarily, they were concerned that students wouldn't necessarily be able to have the some of the associated content knowledge in Spanish, and they really worried about our English learners' comprehension of even the Spanish materials. In a similar light, there was discussion about a lack of embedded language supports, for instance, visuals and graphic organizers and sentence frames that really would, say, help our more diverse learners. There was discussion about how the length of the sessions themselves were, could take 2 to 3 class periods. Some of our staff noted really a lack of diversity in some of the examples that were shared. Some of our special education teachers at the specialized program level felt that even the modified curriculum from Teen Talk would still require a significant amount of work to make that material accessible for their students. And the bottom was just a note that some teachers did feel that the lessons on anatomy and stages of labor were really clear and scientific, of course, and included some useful visuals. So that's some of the feedback that we received from staff. And this is their overall rating. So you can see that more than a majority said that they would use the curriculum with reservations. Less than a third, or about a third, said they would use the curriculum without reservation, and one staff member said that they would not use the curriculum, or meaning they would recommend not to use it at all. And so that's just a quick little snapshot on how our staff reviewed the materials. And now we have an opportunity, Mr. Lichtel, for some questions.
Yes, sir, Mr. Liu. Thank you so much for that. And I see a few questions up here. Let's see. What grade does this curriculum go up to for CVUSD? All right. So let me try to rephrase the question. So, and Mr. Liu, maybe you could go to that very first slide that I shared that was part of my presentation that shows our current curriculum. I want to make sure that we're really clear that currently our program for human growth and development is in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. Again, this is a one-time lesson during either in 4th or 5th grade. It's done, students watch a video segregated by sex. In 6th grade, it's part of their science class provided by their science teacher. Once again, in 4th and 5th grade, it's provided by the district nurse or the school nurse, depending on who's available and what's appropriate. In 7th grade, we have a family life unit. It's about a 2-week unit in the spring semester provided by the science teacher. And then in 9th grade, we have a health class. And part of that health education class includes comprehensive sexual health education and HIV prevention. And so I hope that addresses your question. Again, what grade does this curriculum go up to for CVUSD? Currently, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 9th. The focus of our adoption is 9th grade and 7th grade. Once we have adopted a curriculum for those grade levels, we will then consider 4th, 5th, and 6th, because we do believe that those videos are antiquated. And so at that point, we will engage in conversations about those curriculums. How many staff members are not comfortable sharing this information with kids? When I reviewed certain sections of this material, I was very uncomfortable with many of the role playing. Yeah, so the conversation related to the role playing activities was that for some of those, they would make the teachers felt it would make the students feel uncomfortable, and they weren't sure that there would be activities that they would engage in. I don't have a number. We had probably 15 or so teachers in our chat today when we met with them. I heard from 2 or 3 teachers that said that they felt the role plays could create some uncomfortable situations for some students. I didn't hear anyone, actually, there was one teacher that felt that they were appropriate, but I think the consensus was that that would be something once we adopt a curriculum, that would be an area of focus from the standpoint of, what parts, what role plays, if you will, what parts of the overall curriculum we would use as part of the unit of study or the course. So hopefully that addresses your concern, your question there.
I would also
Yeah.
add to the question on teacher comfortability, when we're able to move forward with a particular curriculum, we will have opportunities for professional development in the curriculum. And that really goes from a standpoint of not only the content, but, helping to provide strategies for our teachers to facilitate curriculum that may be new to them, certainly.
And then there's another question here. As I understand, Ed Code 51938 protects the right of parents to excuse their child from all or part of sex ed, HIV prevention education, and assessments related to that education. And I believe that we agree with that, that is the case. Further, Education Code 51240 allows parents to excuse their child from part of the instruction that conflicts with religious training and beliefs. And so, as Mr. Liu explained, as you move forward with your question, how does it not allow parents to opt out of any gender LGBTQ lessons, as was stated at the beginning of the meeting? The curricular portions of the California Healthy Youth Act, topical portions. So whether it would be HIV/AIDS or whatever the item may be, whatever the topic may be, you can opt your child out of those items. However, the Education Code, as part of the California Healthy Youth Act, is clear that you may not opt your student out of conversations or content related to LGBTQ, gender diversity, so on and so forth. And Mr. Liu said the content is one thing, the people is another. And so in our society, there are people that identify either something that falls under the LGBTQ banner. And so those discussions happen as part of the instructional unit. You cannot opt out of those items. It's not a standalone lesson about LGBTQ, but you can opt out of the individual items that are the curricular components of the California Healthy Youth Act, as we placed up there before. So I know that may sound complex. It may sound like doublespeak. One of the previous questions related to the fact that a lot of this is out of our hands as a school district. These are compliance issues. The curriculum was written. It was approved by the legislature, who we all vote for. And, this is the result of that. And our job is to comply and at the same time, do so in a way that fits our community. And I think our teachers are interested in doing that as well. If my kid is taking 9th grade health in this summer, it will not be the new curriculum. Well, you know what? I think that there's a good chance that the curriculum will be updated depending on who he takes it from or your student takes it from. If they're taking it through one of the private providers, there's a great possibility that they're way ahead of us and they are already compliant beyond where we are right now, because we are playing catch up and we admit that. And so if you take it through one of the outside providers, it's possible that they are, like I said, compliant. If you're going to take it through the Canal Schools Foundation, for example, which is one of the providers that a lot of our students will use, their curriculum most likely will be updated, but I really can't speak for them. I know that Opportunities for Learning, and I know that the BYU program, and I know that other programs that our students do access are either compliant or not, but they're accredited, and we do accept those units. So I hope that addresses that question. And let's see here. Has the review process included consideration of how much harm could result from giving students confusing information on sex-related topics? All three choices include a great deal of potentially confusing information, poorly presented. We agree that poorly presenting any curriculum, whether it's health education or whether it's English language arts or mathematics, can be confusing and could lead to issues down the line. Our goal here is to select a program that our teachers are comfortable with, that we feel will fit our needs, that is compliant, and then work with our teachers to really hone down what instructional units, what actual lessons in whatever curriculum is adopted that will be taught. And again, we do provide a pretty detailed opt-out that allows you as a parent to opt out of, as we have said, all or part of any of the units. And Mr. Liu, if you could cue that up on our website, the opt-out form, I'd like to show parents, in case they haven't seen it, what it is that our opt-out form looks like, which again allows you to, as a parent, to say, okay, well, here's a unit that we as a family are going to address this. And so we're going to opt our student out of this one. Or, it's great information for you to have. And if you choose to allow your student to be in the unit, there certainly gives you the opportunity to follow up with your student and have those discussions at home. So as you go through this form, you'll notice that these are the current units that we are teaching as part of our 2005 adopted curriculum that are part of the California Healthy Youth Act. And what we provide here on the next page by topic, family relationships. And as a parent, you can initial there, and that would opt your student out. Peer relationships, you could initial endocrine and reproductive systems, so on and so forth. So once we adopt a curriculum that is California Healthy Youth Act compliant, this list will grow because there are other components that we are not currently teaching and providing that we need to add to our list. And likewise, you'll have the opportunity to opt out of those points as well. So I hope that answers that question. I think that opportunity for a parent to reinforce family values at home when things are presented at school, I think is one that our parents should exercise as they see fit. And I think it's an important one. So regarding opt-out as a parent, am I able to opt out of gender identity curricula? No, you cannot. There is no byway in the legislation that allows a parent to opt out of anything related to gender identity that I know of or that I'm aware of, and certainly Mr. Liu or Mr. Mercer can tell me otherwise. But I think the legislation is pretty clear that you may opt out of the topics that are part of the California Healthy Youth Act. You may not opt out of anything related to gender expression, or LGBTQ. What % of Conejo School District kids fall under the LGBTQ, et cetera, label right now? I couldn't tell you. I don't know that we have that information. Yeah, so unfortunately, I'm not sure that I can answer that question. It's not something that we track. All right, Mr. Liu, do we have anything else on the presentation that we need to cover? If not, we'll take some last questions here. We have a few minutes. If you want to type some questions in, we'll be happy to answer those. Again, we appreciate, I see the list of individuals that have joined us this evening, and I see several of you have been in all 3 of our sessions, and we do appreciate that. We put a lot of time and effort into these events, quite frankly. We meet for several hours to kind of hash out our presentations and what's going to be covered, and making sure that we have answers to the best of our ability. So we do appreciate your time being part of this. And again, our hope is to provide you all the information that we have. We want to be as transparent as possible as we move forward with adopting a California Healthy Youth Act compliant curriculum. So if there's no other questions, Mr. Mercer, do you have anything to add? Mr. Liu, anything to add? I know there was that last question about, specific number of
our LGBTQ plus students, and absolutely correct. We don't have a specific number around that. And that's because students who may be LGBTQ plus, they may not be comfortable. Number one, expressing that information or feeling safe enough to be out in that identity. But I can say that Mr. Mercer and I, all of our departments, we do work closely with our at the high school level, our Gay Straight Alliance group, and those are really active in busy student groups, and we know that those students are certainly there and really important, and certainly are part of a protected class here in the state of California. So, I didn't know the intention of the question, but I just wanted to share that.
Mr. Liu, can you respond to this question? Are the recordings for previous meetings available?
Yeah, let me actually just, let me bring up the website really quickly.
While you're doing that, I do want to express, I apologize. I know how frustrating it can be to type in the questions and so forth. So I do apologize for that, but webinar style, this is how we have organized this. And so I do apologize. And then there's another question. Will parents be notified which curriculum is selected at the end? Let me go through that one last time, because I want to make sure that we're all kind of understanding that we are in a process right now of reviewing 3 different curriculums. And once our teachers and staff agree that there is one particular curriculum of the 3, Rights, Respect, Responsibility, Positive Prevention Plus, or Teen Talk, that we want to move forward to the Board of Education for approval, we will take that curriculum to the board. The board will then provide us time to have additional preview nights. So as soon as we are ready to take one to the board, we will do that as an information item. Then we will have preview nights, and we will give parents the opportunity to weigh in again. We will do everything we can to get you more of the materials available. Somebody had asked about videos. Can the videos from Positive Prevention Plus be available? I can't answer that question today, because when we asked originally, we were not granted that opportunity because, of course, they're copyrighted. But then once we have that final preview night, depending on feedback from staff and from families, then we will move that back to the Board of Education for their approval. So I hope that answers, that addresses that question.
And then just to show you quickly where the videos, the previous webinars are, again, just going to our main district webpage, scroll down, and in the yellow bar, it's we have a health education page. The 2 webinars are right here up at the top. So if you open it up, it just goes to a YouTube link of the previous 2. And we will post this webinar tomorrow or the following day on Friday.
All right, so it's just a minute after 7. I'm not seeing any other questions. We will stand by for a few more minutes and answer any questions. And otherwise, want to thank all of you for participating tonight. Want to thank Mr. Garcia for being with us and providing translation. I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you for holding these webinars and answering questions from parents. Thank you for that, Mrs. Dodal. We do appreciate that, and that might be a great place to end. So we do thank you once more. Feel free to email us, call, and we're happy to provide you with information. So with that, thank you once again, and have a wonderful evening.